The wonderful world of Pokémon, full of sweet sounds, serene sights, and a whole lot of excitement. Pokémon is a world like none other, as it houses hundreds of different creatures that each have their own story. They each have something that makes them stand out. If you aren't a fan of a specific Pokémon, there's somebody out there who loves it. And if you love a Pokémon, somebody else hates it. Over Pokémon's 21 years of existence, we believe we have seen so much, but there is still something more. Pokémon has a way of taking you on a journey and keeping you on that journey, a determined quest that will lead you down a road to greatness. And that journey might lead you to another, and another, and another. What we're trying to get at is how the world of Pokémon that we all know and love has changed. Right when we thought Pokémon was at its peak, it kept going higher and higher. With every new twist and turn comes a beautiful ending. Every thought and idea gets mixed into something special, something fans can indulge in for hours upon hours. Whether it's the Pokémon video games, a Pokémon plush, or even the Pokémon trading card game, we fans are all connected by a unique link cable, the world of Pokémon. Nobody can explain their intense connections to Pokémon. Everybody has their story as to how they got into the game, whether it was older siblings, or a Christmas present, or seeing the anime on TV. But the intense connection between that first Pokémon game, or especially that first Pokémon, many Pokémon fans have still carried this original piece. So, with all that said, let's take a look at how this great idea was turned into the gaming juggernaut it is today. Back in 1989, when the first Nintendo Game Boy was released, Game Freak developer and Pokémon creator Satoshi Tajiri first thought of the concept for Pokémon. Although at the time it was not called Pokémon, he still had a lot of the same ideas that would become the eventual games Pokémon Red and Blue. Tajiri enjoyed collecting insects in his youth, which is correlated to the main concept of Pokémon: catch Pokémon and play with them. From this childhood passion sparked the idea of Pokémon trainers, the humans who collected Pokémon and used them for battle and bonded with them as friends. Tajiri's hobby of bug collecting changed into a hobby of playing video games as he got older. He nearly failed high school due to his many cut classes in order to play games like Space Invaders. Inspired by his love of video games and his mentor Shigeru Miyamoto, the creator of Mario, he and his friend Ken Sugimori created Game Freak in 1989. This brand new developing company was given a date with Nintendo right away as they created Yoshi's debut game, Mario & Yoshi, in 1991. Tajiri was now keen on making a game based off of his childhood passion and the concept of collecting and battling creatures that he thought of during the dawn of Game Freak. After 6 years of development, in which Game Freak almost went bankrupt, Game Freak and Nintendo released Pokémon Red and Pokémon Green on February 27, 1996 in Japan. With a team of masterminds assembled, such as producer Shigeru Miyamoto, artist Ken Sugimori, and composer Junichi Masuda, Tajiri's idea was spun into one of the most popular entertainment franchises of all time. The name Pokémon is the Romanian translation of the Japanese word for pocket monsters. Pocket Monsters' incredible popularity got growing and gave Game Freak and Nintendo no other choice but to release the games across the Pacific. They changed Pokémon Green to Pokémon Blue, and Pokémon Red and Pokémon Blue were released on September 28, 1998. American fans were immediately reeled in by the wonderful world of Pokémon, making the years 1999, 2000, and 2001 the time known as when Pokémon ruled the world. Everybody was playing Pokémon at this time, whether you were a 6-year-old kid or a 25-year-old. As time went on, the Pokémon anime was developed and released, as well as the Pokémon trading card game, which is commonly known as the TCG. The first anime episode released in Japan on April 1, 1997, and in the US on September 8, 1998. The TCG was first launched in October of 1996 in Japan, and in the US in December of 1998. At this point in time, Pokémon was dominating the gaming world, and with growing popularity and a sequel already in the works, Tajiri's creation of Pokémon was complete, and he was now set on one goal: global gaming domination. As a brief aside, the following conversation is going to be based on the American games, with American releases and games being discussed, just so no one's confused. Pokémon Red and Blue gave us everything we love about Pokémon, as they introduced us to the world of Pokémon and the creatures and characters we love to this day. With Game Boy graphics and music engine, Game Freak was able to create a masterpiece of a game with the sources they had available to them. The artist team, Ken Sugimori, gave us our first looks at each Pokémon and the town in the Kanto Region. Every little black and white pixel was given so much thought and effort in order to create the world we love. Musical composer Ken Sugimori was able to create such beautiful and masterful tracks in every single route in town. Every place in the Kanto region has a distinct look and sound that was presented to us in Red and Blue, but they left room for more development and improvement too. The Pokémon anime was also being loved by younger fans, so Game Freak opted to create Pokémon Yellow Special Pikachu Edition, another Kanto experience that closely follows the journey of Ash Ketchum. In this game, your starter is Pikachu, and you are able to catch most of the Pokémon that Ash owned, including all 3 of the Kantorian starter Pokémon. Aside from sprite changes and a few aesthetic changes, the game is very much the same as Pokémon Red and Blue. After the global success of Pokémon Red, Blue, and Yellow, Game Freak gave fans arguably one of, if not the greatest sequels of all time, Pokémon Gold and Silver. Gold and Silver introduced us to an all-new region known as the Johto Region, 100 new Pokémon, new towns, characters, music, and most of all, a whole new adventure. You play as the main protagonist Ethan, and have the ability to choose from one of 3 starters, Chikorita the Grass Starter, Cincadil the Fire Starter, or Totodile the Water Starter. You start your journey with yet another tree named Professor Elm of New Barktown, and set off to become the champion of the Indigo Plateau. The Generation 1 based Team Rocket returns to take over the Goldenrod City radio tower in an attempt to reach their leader Giovanni, who disappeared 3 years earlier after the events of Pokémon Red and Blue. After stopping Team Rocket yet again, you make your way to the Indigo Plateau and beat the champion Lance, who has taken his spot back as champion after Red disappeared. After becoming champion, you are introduced to the greatest Nintendo post-game of all time, the Kanto Region. At the time, Game Freak and Nintendo felt that Pokémon Gold and Silver would be the series' final entry, so they opened up the Kanto Region for fans to explore. You can collect all 8 badges of Kanto and visit all the same towns you did a couple years earlier. You are then notified about the mysterious disappearance of the Cantonian champion Red. You venture to Mount Silver, and at the summit you find the man himself, Red. He does not speak to you, but you challenge him to a battle. He houses the highest level team of Pokémon in the whole franchise, and in beating him, you will become the greatest Pokémon master of them all. Gold and Silver brought fans a ton of surprises and gave us many great new features. The games were released for the Game Boy Color, giving fans the privilege of enjoying the world of Pokémon in color. Game Freak also added the day-night cycle in which the game's time correlates with real-life time, making the game feel a bit more realistic. The day-night cycle also led to the introduction of nocturnal Pokémon, as some Pokémon could only be caught during the night, while others could only be caught during the day. The music is greatly composed by Junichi Masuda yet again, as he creates new and great music using the same engine as the previous game. Another new feature, which is now a mainstay in the Pokémon franchise, is that each game is based on a certain legendary Pokémon, Gold being Ho-Oh and Silver being Lugia. Towards the end of the game, you have the opportunity to catch these legendaries and add them onto your Pokémon League team. These games evolved the previous entries and showed fans that Game Freak was ready to make each new game more innovative than the last. Fans were also snuck a 3rd edition of Generation 2 in Pokémon Crystal. Crystal was very similar to Gold and Silver, as Yellow was to Red and Blue, but gave us one main feature. You now had the ability to play as a girl protagonist, who was known as Chris. The game's side story is running into the legendary beast Suicune throughout your journey, and eventually you are able to catch it as your legendary partner. A few years later, Game Freak and Nintendo announced a whole new duo of games that would take place in a whole new region and on a whole new handheld console. Game Freak gave us Pokemon's 3rd generation, Pokemon Ruby and Pokemon Sapphire, which take place in the all-new Hoenn region. Game Freak gave us completely different versions of Pokemon, as the graphics were completely revamped and the color was clean and crisp. You play as either Brendan, the male protagonist, or May, the female protagonist, and are introduced to the Pokemon world by yet another tree-named professor known as Professor Birch, as you are moving to Little Root Town from the Johto region. You step out of the moving truck and are amazed by the beautiful and serene graphics and music. You could choose from one of 3 starters as usual: Trico the grass type, Torchic the fire type, or Mudkip the water type. Game Freak gives us another plethora of new features, as they can be more expansive due to the new engine of the Game Boy Advance. Ruby and Sapphire also created the weather cycle, introducing rain due to Hoenn being based off of a tropical island. In this game, there are 2 different evil organizations that are based on what version you chose. Each of these organizations is after one of the 2 ancient legendary beasts. In Pokemon Ruby, you go up against Team Magma, who are after the legendary ground-type Groudon, in an attempt to turn the whole world to land, and in Pokemon Sapphire, you go up against Team Aqua, who are after the legendary water-type Kyogre, in an attempt to turn the whole world to water. And yes, those are the stupidest evil motivations in all of Pokemon, but that's besides the point. Your goal is the usual: collect 8 badges, stop the evil gang from obtaining the legendary Pokémon, and catch a legendary and become champion. Pokémon abilities and natures were also introduced, making way to the present-day competitive scene. Each Pokémon can have one of many different abilities and natures, which can each have positive and negative effects on the Pokémon. The music is absolutely incredible in these games, and is widely considered the best of the series. The introduction of tons of new instruments, with the trumpet being highlighted, and the Game Boy Advance's new sound engine, Junichi Masuda was able to create catchy masterpieces that make fans play with the volume all the way up. Game Freak gave us so much in Generation 3 and continued to implement more and more with each new game. A year later, Game Freak also gave us Pokémon Leaf Green and Pokémon Fire Red, which were just the first Pokémon remakes. These games were basically Pokémon Red and Blue with enhanced graphics, music, battle, and gameplay. Every part of the Kanto journey was enhanced using the Game Boy Advance engine. These games are loved by many and led to the eventual remakes of Pokémon Gold and Silver as well as Pokémon Ruby and Sapphire. So, that's going to be it for part 1 of this documentary. Please subscribe to Game Domain News for part 2. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and as always, thanks for watching Game Domain.